All right, so on to the next formula, Heron's formula. So if you have the three sides of a triangle, you can easily find the area of that particular triangle. So the first step that you have to do is find what's called a semi-perimeter, which means that you take all the sides and divide by 2. So let's do this first example. So first find S, which you're going to add up your 3 sides and divide by 2. So if we do that, you've got 6 plus 9, 15, plus 13, divide by 2, and you're going to get 14. You then just plug everything into the formula. So K equals the square root of 14 times 14 minus 6. And ABC typically goes from like least to greatest if you're trying to figure out kind of the pattern of how you write that out. So you do 14 minus 6. We're going to do 14 minus 9. And finally, we're going to do our 14 minus 13. Okay. And see how we're not getting any negative numbers? If you just look at each of those parentheses, they're all going to be positive numbers. So let's just clean this up like I usually do. So you're going to have 14 times 8 times 5 and times 1. Okay. Now, do you have to do this? No, you could just enter everything into your calculator. But I just like to make sure that I'm doing everything correctly. So you're just going to do the square root of 14 times 8 times 5 times 1. When you do that, you end up getting the square root. Oh, let me go back. It ends up being, inside is 14 times 8 times 5 times 1 is 560. When you take the square root of 560, you end up getting 23.66, which they want us to round to the nearest 10 square units. So that means they technically want us to round down to 20, and that's going to be square units or centimeters squared in this case. Okay. So if you want to pause this video and try example number 2, you can do that. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of jump into the next example. So again, I'm going to take my 3 sides, add them up together, and divide by 2. So you've got, ends up being 10, because it'll be 20 on the top. So if S equals 10, we're just going to go right to our formula. We're going to plug in your 10 for your S. Then we're going to do 10 minus 4, and then 10 minus 7, and then 10 minus 9. Again, seeing that just by looking at all the parentheses, you're all going to have positive numbers. So that's going to be 10 times 6 times 3 times 1 again. Then if we multiply all those numbers together, you should get 180. Square root of 180 is going to give us 13.4. But again, they want us to round us to the nearest 10, so we're actually going to round down. And that's, your answer is going to be 10, and then it'll be feet squared. All right, let's look at a couple more examples using this formula. All right, so again, we've got 3 sides of a triangle. Right? This time they want us to find the altitude from A to the side, to side A. So what I'm going to do first is let's just find the area. All right, so let's just do what we were doing. I'm going to take your 16, 18, and 22. We're going to add those together to get our value of S and divide by 2. So you get 28. Okay. We're then going to go in and we're going to plug everything into our formula like we've done before, starting with that semi-perimeter, which is 28. Then we're going to do 28 minus 16, 28 minus 18, and then 28 minus 22. Okay. Clean all this up so that way we've got some, so this one ends up being 12, 28 minus 16. Then 28 minus 18 is 10. And then 28 minus 22 is going to give us 6. I'm going to multiply all those numbers inside, just so that way you guys can follow along and see what that's going to be. This is going to be the square root of 20,160. I'm going to find the square root of that number, which is going to give me 141.98. They say round answers to the nearest unit, so I'm going to do 142. And this is going to be centimeters squared. So let's get to the question they asked us. They want us to eventually find the altitude from A to the side A. So if we were to just look at this triangle, right? Okay, so we've got, so here's A, here's B, here's C. Okay. We know that side A is 16, side B is 18, and we know side C is going to be 22. So what they're asking us to do is they want us to figure out what this altitude is, this x value. Right? So we have a ton of information. It's just trying to figure out what we need in order to solve. So we're going to use our area that we found. We're going to use 16 as the base. So an altitude always goes from the vertice down to the opposite side and makes a 90-degree angle. If we have the area of that particular triangle and that base, what we can end up doing is actually just use our standard formula as area equals 1/2 base times height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the A into 142 because that's the area. We know the base is 16 and we have to figure out that altitude, that height. So you're going to take 1/2 of 16, which is 8. You have 142 equals 8 times height. Divide each side by 8, and that will give us the height. And again, I'm just going to round to the nearest unit. So 142 divided by 8, that ends up giving us 17.75 or 18. So it'll be 18 centimeters is your final answer. Okay, so again, time consuming because you have to use one formula to help you find another, but it's just like when we were dealing with law of cosines and you have to, figure out what one of those sides are going to be so that way you can use law of sines again. So let's try one more just to make sure that we have this. All right, so again, first we need to find the area of that triangle. So we're going to find S. You're going to take those three sides, 6, 9, and 11, and then add them together and divide by 2. So you have 15 plus 11 is 26. Half of your 26 is 13. Right? Finding K now. So you need to take the square root of 13 times 13 minus 6 times 13 minus 9, and then 13 minus 11. Clean that up, or enter it right into your calculator. So you're going to have 13 times 7 times 4 times 2. If we multiply those out, just so that way you guys can see the steps, again, you can go through and just multiply everything together in your calculator. You can take this whole row here and just plug it right in if you want to. Just be careful, use parentheses to mark everything up. You've got square root of 728. So the square root of 728 is going to be 26.98. Again, I'm going to round to the nearest whole number. So that's going to be 27 feet squared. All right, not done yet because we want to find the altitude from B. So again, I'm going to draw that picture just because it's easier to see what's going on. So let's just do A, B, C. And notice that the way I'm drawing these two is that whatever altitude I want to find, I put that angle on the top so that way it's easier to see so you don't have to rotate your paper and kind of look around if B was on the side. So from here, I'm just going to label all my sides. So you have little side A is 6, side B is 9, side C is 11. And again, we want to find your altitude, which goes from the highest point in your triangle down perpendicular to the base, which is going to be 9. So now we have all of our information because we have the area, you have your base. Let's find x. So you're going to do area equals 1/2 base times height. Your area is 27. Your base is 9. Okay. Half of 9 is 4.5. So you have 4.5 h equals 27. So your height or your altitude is going to be 27 divided by 4.5, which is a whole number of 6. So your altitude is 6 feet. Okay. All right, so try some examples on your own. Let me know if you have any questions. We'll go over all of those homework problems next class.